It turns out that Musk also has things that he can't handle. And that's the 4680 dry electrode technology. 5 years. His wholeness has not yet come. 30 years ago we talked. Yushan boss dares to be silent to Musk. Tell him 4680 is doomed. No more guesses. He should be talking about his phone calls. The core card point is in this dry motor. What about this video? Let's learn more about it. For now, 4680 aluminum type is produced more than 100 million. Reached a mile. But this TV is free from 2020. The one on the ground, it's not exactly the same, so at least it's dry electrode design. Only the negative electrode adopts the dry process, and the positive electrode, still wet process. But it is said that this problem, it seems to have been conquered. And soon, maybe now, there will be true wholeness. But what? This doesn't prevent us from learning something new. First of all, what about the positive and negative electrodes of this lithium-ion battery? It's called a polar film. They are divided into this wet and dry process. What about in electromechanical production, mainly divided into mixing materials? A wok, one piece of fruit bud, and one piece sliced in 4 steps. So what about the good one? Finally, assemble it with this diaphragm. Story tested today. Then the machinery turns into a detection light, and the production of this positive and negative pole piece. It is also the most expensive part of the entire battery production, over 30%. At the same time, this link is also an energy-consuming commodity, accounting for more than 50%. Of course, the exact numbers are not so precise. Probably have this concept. The first thing to understand here is, what exactly are the ingredients of the pole piece? We often talk about, is it positive, lithium iron phosphate, or ternary? The negative electrode is graphite, right? But the real pole piece, the ingredients are incredibly complex. Then, in the casting process, elevator materials are included. Active substance, conductor, binders, and solvents. What about one of them? Lithium iron phosphate, or lithium ternary. It's the active material of the positive electrode. Graphite is the stimulant. Doped conductive agent. Large agents to form additives. And this gone a horse, he naturally needs something to carry. However, there is a difference at the government level in this regard. What about this positive electrode? The linking agent it generally uses is polyvinylidene 2-to-1, PVDF for short. This adhesive to dissolve in a kind of urchin called unmethyl bilu in the solvent. What about this solvent, NP for short? And what about the apps? It uses an adhesive. It's a mixture of 2 things. They're soja, Bing Meng under focus. And they usually dissolve in this red nose water. Our water is the container. And you know what? What about the container itself? Is not involved in phone calls and reactions. After he's done hiking, it needs some recycling. So far, his mission as a carrier comes to an end. Then the recycling process is achieved by evaporation. Generally speaking, this motor of a lithium battery, it needs to be at 120 degrees Celsius, 3 to 12 to 24 hours. Then according to the data given by the catch paper, in an industry with an annual production capacity of 1 million, 13 years of happy ion batteries, his slaughtering and drying industries alone account for 51% of the total consumption. What about most of these cultures? It is used to heat large drying units and dissolve the fire. So the Nightman said this. You get the idea. What are the benefits of this concept? Question. It saves electricity. Therefore, under the concept of, he doesn't necessarily save the purchase of containers. Nonsense. His production itself can reduce costs. So this is the contribution of the exercise to the cost. What about other things? It's more environmentally friendly, because the positive electrode uses this NMT footprint. It's a poison. Then it was decoupled on the production line and recycled. However, there will still be residues in the internal fire of the battery. So get rid of this container. The dry process can be used. There are many local environmental regulations. And not only that, the single electrode can also increase the compaction density of the pole pieces. Because of the wet mixing, this solvent is evaporated. It leaves a gap. This results in a low compaction density of the material. So the dry method can solve this problem. Let the chip crack after the ATV. What about micropores and other problems? Substantially reduced. Is there any data showing that, after using the dry method, symbiotic density of lithium iron phosphate can be upgraded from 2.3 to 3.05. Can Sanyang aluminum material be increased from 3.34 to 3.62? The graphite negative electrode can be increased from 1.63 to 1.81. Should it be said or immediate? Is that why, after using the dry process, this metric density can be improved? So this aspect is a real density. Can it be improved? What about the other side? Is the dry process allows to dial out thicker clicks? This can increase the amount of detoxification. Generally speaking, this back seat of the traditional spellcasting department, the limit is about 160 microns. And what about a dry cigarette? Between 30 centimeters and 5 millimeters. So for a TV like 4680, so what? It's possible to cram more energy into a limited space, and thus, a dry exercise is a very good option. This is why Musk is so determined. All experts in this field are satisfied. But here's the thing, although Maxwell is in this field, accumulated a lot of patented technologies, but in fact, at this stage of mass production, everyone has to feel the stones to cross the river. It didn't go so well. Then this is mainly related to his craftsmanship. What about in the field of single motors? There are currently two more representative processes. Then one is the original drawing of the salt solar term. One is electrostatic spraying. Then the former representative company was to buy all. And in the back is Toyota. Let's focus on Maxwell's path, because this is empty. The so-called young art was originally painted. It's easy to understand. It is essentially a way to make nyan yi. They form a kind of fiber network to achieve the self-supporting effect of a piece of material. What about his specific method? Is the active substance, after mixing the conductive agent in the binder, for this family of dry mixtures. Shear force, of all things. What about shear force? It makes you old. The powder originally deposited in the adhesive electrode. At the same time, it forms a fibrous network. And then what about after this roll? It creates a self-sustaining effect. The original line here is a material academic. It refers to the microscopic fibrous structure. Under this process, it's all about the fiber. It's all about the binder to implement the structure. But what about traditional spellcasting techniques? PVF used for positive electrodes. The Siemens bar used for the negative electrode cannot achieve this effect. So, it needs to be replaced by a method called, that is, the pinch of TTFE. Materials at a specific temperature and specific shear forces will eventually evolve gradually. Then the molecular weight will change, and that leads to fibrosis. What about the fibrotic network? It plays a supporting role in the concept, and compared to the wet process industry. What about this fibrous mesh-supported structure? It can also enhance the structural strength of the electrode. The cycle life can be improved to a certain extent because of the positive and negative electrodes of lithium-ion batteries at the end of the country are at risk of structural collapse. Are there any professional experiments that show that dry cathode supported by PDF he is in this network structure maintains a high degree of integrity? I believe in a 90% capacity retention rate for casting spells. The liver method has achieved 95% of the level. So, this is another advantage of a liver electrode. So here's the problem. Why did this ancient girl encounter difficult labor in 4680? This is because the powder of the positive electrode has been overpressed. It is prone to chemical changes. This membrane formed on his limb after a broken tooth still fades easily. And the positive material, it's a metal oxide. Its hardness is relatively high. Then directly put the pneumatic stone in this oil car on fire. It is easy to cause damage to this mixed pressure equipment. What about Musk? Previously, during his storm, and it confirms that. There is a technical point here. Dry electrode compaction requires rapid feed to increase pressure. Then only thus, this module of his is anti-ion. It is possible to reduce as much as possible. Obviously, at very high speed and under very high pressure, the quality of the elevator is even more difficult to control. Then, from a technological perspective, this seed drying technology, for this mixing uniformity of dry powder, motor thickness, this transfer process has very high requirements. For us, is a forest network structure. But he is, after all, he is a capable type, compared to this level of casting craftsmanship. Though not on the same level, so that's why he had a difficult labor. So, since 468 can be completely solved now, how did he overcome it? What about this detail? It's not public, so I can't find a very reasonable explanation. At least one optimization measure. That's the ratio of connectors. not hesitate to make adjustments, because at this age, it doesn't really add up that much, because plus more tired goods. The quantity of this positive electrode will decrease, but if you increase the proportion of age, it is possible to some extent increase the mechanical strength and flexibility of electrodes. Then maybe it will solve some problems if it should come. But the question is, it doesn't add cost. So, I guess 4680 may have made a similar compromise. Of course, according to PR reports, he may have readjusted. What about this production process? Don't rely too much on the press. It's about putting people under pressure, divided into multiple stages to execute. And this means manufacturing cost of the improvement plan. It should be higher than the original design. Then this is 4680 in pursuit of extreme cost. A little compromise. Overall, the complete set of 680 has arrived. But what about this clean technology? Lack of large-scale industrial ring validation, especially as a gravity TV. How did he do? It still requires further observation. 536 induction included.